And thanks for joining us on another busy night of all things people, power, and politics. This is The Pulse. I'm Rupraj. More of you are making us your home for unbiased political news every night, Republicans, Democrats, and everyone in between. And we're grateful that you join us every day. We have a lot to unpack this evening, so buckle up. It has been a week since a clash between demonstrators in Dearborn, an alt-right group with an anti-Islam message meeting up with counter-protesters promoting peace. Mayor Abdullah Hammoud is in Studio C with us to tell us how the city is moving forward. And we're diving into the state of the race for governor with Republican candidate Tom Leonard, where things stand with his campaign, and a conversation about the big political stories of the day. But we begin tonight in the same spot we did yesterday, with the Trump administration's anger over a video by Democratic lawmakers, including Michigan Senator Elissa Slotkin, calling on the military to ignore illegal orders. She and other Dems say the FBI contacted them to start scheduling interviews. This would mark the second investigation tied to this video, and comes a day after the Pentagon says it was investigating Arizona's Mark Kelly over possible military law violations. President Trump is accusing them of sedition, even though troops are duty-bound to ignore unlawful orders. Senator Slotkin spoke today and called the move a scare tactic, adding she's not backing down.
That is not going to stop me or anyone else who made this video. In fact, I think it's more important than ever, given that he's used this same tactic on the private sector, on law firms, on universities. We are not the first group and we are not the last group that he is going to use the arms of the government. And again, if he's going to use the FBI against members of Congress, what would he do to average citizens who don't have that elected cover? So it's not going to stop me. It's not going to stop others. I feel strongly that we were doing what we believed was right based on our oath of office to the Constitution. And if he wants to use the FBI and Kash Patel against us, that is his choice, but it just reaffirms why we made this video in the first place.
She sounds a bit different. The senator says she's fighting a cold right now as she gave that speech. The FBI has not commented, as they usually don't, about these matters, but Director Kash Patel says it's an ongoing matter as a reason for not giving more details. That's just scratching the surface, so let's pick up the pace and run through some of the other big stories we're following right now, starting in Metro Detroit, where a Waterford man is accused of threatening to kill the Michigan GOP youth chair and making threats against the Oakland County Republican Party. Prosecutors charged 34-year-old Ryan Valance with making a false report or threat of terrorism. He faces up to 20 years in prison. Investigators say he threatened to torch the Oakland GOP headquarters and kill 19-year-old Republican youth chair Krish Mathrani. Valance is in the Oakland County Jail at this hour. Mathrani will be on The Pulse Wednesday night to talk about this latest threat of political violence that, by the way, should be inexcusable and abhorrent to everybody on all sides. To the White House now, where a proposal to extend those Affordable Care Act subsidies is being circulated. You'll remember those were at the heart of the government shutdown. Millions of Americans face skyrocketing health care costs if those aren't extended by the end of the year. The White House says no plan is final until the president announces it, but the draft proposal suggests he's open to extending those subsidies as he and congressional Republicans try to find a broader solution to that health care issue. It also would require anyone on Obamacare to pay some sort of a premium, regardless of the type of coverage. And the Trump administration planning to review all refugees admitted to this country during the Biden administration. That's according to a memo the Associated Press got its hands on. The memo accuses the Biden administration of prioritizing speed and quantity over, quote, detailed screening and vetting. Nearly 200,000 refugees came to the U.S. during that time. Now, according to that memo, there will be a list of people to re-interview within the next 3 months. All right, we're less than a year now out from the midterms, and there is so much going on, issues on both sides of the aisle. It's something we focus a lot on as we get closer. We'd like to bring in some voices from the right and the left to dive into these issues. And from the Republican point of view, we have with us Matthew Wilk. He's a member of the Republican State Committee. And Matthew, it's always good to see you. Thanks for joining us tonight on The Pulse.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you. And I just want to begin by asking you, look, this is a terrible thing that happened to the youth chair, this kind of a threat. The facility being threatened, to be burned. I find it really rich when anyone on either side of the aisle will say, oh, it's the left, oh, it's the right. We've seen this happen on both sides. What's your message as someone who is such a leader in the Republican Party about what we're seeing?
My message is that rhetoric never wins over another person. It's never persuasive to somebody. At the end of the game, what we're trying to do is get people to vote for our guy, right, or our gal. And you have to get people out to do that. They have to change their mind, maybe, or solidify their position. This rhetoric never works. It never convinces anyone. I've never heard anyone say, hey, I was going to vote for this guy, but then you called him an X, and therefore I'm not going to do it. The rhetoric has to be toned down. We saw 2 attempted assassinations of the president, 1 actual assassination of Charlie Kirk. We have to tone it down. Let's just talk about issues and what things that people care about and things that make people's lives better.
And I'm certainly not trying to do a both-sidedness thing here, but we've seen political violence on both ends of the spectrum. Nancy Pelosi's husband, Josh Shapiro's house, Governor Whitmer, there's been threats. Bottom line is, this is inexcusable. And in my mind, it's un-American. Because to have 2 parties that disagree but can do so with civility is exactly what the bedrock of this country is about.
Right. What do we found this country on the concept of? Voting.
That's right.
Let's take it to the voting booth. Let's see who wins and loses, and let's accept the results, right? And that's not true maybe in 16 or 20 or 24. And let's accept the results and move on. But let's do the American way. Let's make our policies through our elected legislators, and let's work hard to make things better. That's what people want out of their life.
Let's talk about making things make sense to people. Right now we have the he said, she said, literally coming from Slotkin and the president talking about that video that was put out there. Right. Without framing it too much, I just want to ask you the question. What was in your mind, if there is something wrong with it in your mind, wrong with the video that those 6 lawmakers put out?
Well, you can't incite members of the military to disobey orders, period. If you go back in law to the My Lai massacre, that was the hard end where you said, hey, look, you don't have to follow an order to kill little babies. But that's not what we're talking about here. When they ask Senator Slotkin what were the specific illegal orders that she was referring to, she couldn't name one. So we're talking about hypotheticals. And obviously, what we don't want is members of the military to say, you know what, I'm reviewing what the president has told me, the commander-in-chief, or my general or my sergeant or whomever, and then trying to make their own judgments about how this applies.
So let's talk for a moment about this and dive in a little bit. So there is an article in the military code, and it's Article 92, that essentially says that any member of the military is actually obligated to not follow an illegal or unlawful order.
Right.
If this was simply a reminder of that because of maybe some loosening of the guards in terms of the National Guard and others, right, what's wrong with the reminder if it's an unlawful order that they're asking people not to obey?
Under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, if I recall, the person who makes that determination is a superior officer, right? It's not up to a bunch of people in the National Guard to say, hey, am I following the rules? They don't know. Legal scholars sometimes don't know. So it was trying to erode that. And she was trying to make a point. You know, we think Trump is overreaching. You could say that. I don't think the way to go about that way is the right way to do it.
Let's talk for a moment about the Republican Party. We discussed this the other day on the show. There was a time, and I can safely say this, that on this program, we could say something that was critical of President Trump. And the minute we said it, people said, how dare you come after our guy? And there was this mentality as though he was a demigod or someone who should never be questioned. And again, the bedrock of this country is to be able to question your leaders, including the president. Do you think that's changing? And do you think there's more Republicans out there who can say, you know what, I don't always like the way the president said that, or I may not even agree with his policy, but I'm still a supporter?
Well, that's been true for a while. You had a lot of people. Yeah, absolutely. You had a lot of people who didn't like what he said and voted for him anyway because they liked his policies. And now what you find with respect to some of his policies, he throws something out there and says, hey, I think this is a good idea. Backlash comes and he changes his mind. He has a unique ability as a politician. He has no inability to change what he's thinking at the time, and that's probably a good thing. An average politician doesn't do that. So yeah, there are a lot of people that accomplish that for sure.
Take us to 2028 here. You talk about authenticity, whether you like President Trump or you don't. The bottom line is this is a man who won over votes with his raw authenticity and his ability to break through the glass. This is a man who's done television for years, understands how this industry works, and understands how to use it and for his good and for the party. Moving forward, who else in the Republican Party do you think can take over the spot of President Trump?
I will tell you, Trump is one of one. He always has been. Anyone who has tried to replicate the Trump process has failed at it.
Who's as authentic as he is in the Republican Party?
I think J.D. Vance is very authentic. If you read,
You think?
yeah, people loved him. Remember, people loved him when he went on Oprah with his book and talked about his life. And I read the book in 2015, and it's heart-wrenching. And they viewed that as authenticity. It allows you an opportunity to call out your own party from time to time, and he's been doing that a little bit. It's hard because he's got a boss, and you can't do that. But I think he's very authentic. I think Marco Rubio has gone from 2016 as kind of maybe a meh candidate. To now he's really catching a stride. Now he's talking from the cuff, and people like to hear that. So those are the top two.
Is there a lesson, though, from the Biden-Harris camp that the Trump-Vance camp can look at when it comes to modeling the next iteration? I mean, is J.D. Vance simply a mirror of President Trump like Kamala Harris was of Biden?
No, he's much more
independent-minded.
He's independent-minded. He speaks differently. He's a Yale-educated attorney. You know, Trump, for all his things, was not. He's rough. He's raw. He's from Jersey. He's from Manhattan. He talks that language. J.D. Vance is from Ohio. He kind of speaks our language a little bit. He speaks a little bit Midwestern.
The Midwest flow, yeah.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
You know, it's always great to talk to you online when we discuss politics and issues there on X, formerly known as Twitter. And I'm glad to finally have you on the show. Come back and talk to us again.
Love to. Thank you. Anytime.
Great to see you. Matthew Wilk with us here tonight. It's been a week since these clashes between demonstrators in Dearborn, and tonight we're taking a closer look at how the city is moving forward. Mayor Abdullah Hammoud is in Studio C here on The Pulse. You're watching The Pulse on Fox 2. Still on. Back now on The Pulse, looking at all things people, power, and politics. Here to talk about last week's clashes between demonstrators in Dearborn and how they're moving forward. The city's mayor, Abdullah Hammoud. And Mayor Hammoud, it's always good to see you. Thanks for joining us here on The Pulse tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, let's talk about what this feels like, almost like the hangover of the whiplash of the event from last week. It was some tension there, but it certainly didn't amount to, thanks to the police force and to the people who took part, anything too serious. What do you make of last week's demonstration?
Absolutely. You know, unfortunately, there are people who have been lied to about what Dearborn is, what Dearborn represents, which in my eyes is one of the most beautiful American cities that we have. How folks of all backgrounds, all faiths come together, live and coexist, and how we have such a strong interfaith community. And that site on Alter Road, historic Alter Road, where you have the nation's largest mosque, side by side with multiple churches and church steeples, mosque domes sharing the same skyline, strikes the hearts of so many because of how successful Dearborn is.
Talk for a moment as a Muslim American and as the mayor of that city about that interfaith beauty that you see in Dearborn. I've covered Dearborn for 16, 17 years. Yeah. I grew up in Troy down the road. It always seems like a very welcoming and inclusive community. What is it about these out-of-town folks who come in who don't get that? What is that? Where is that coming from?
You know, unfortunately, I think a lot of it comes from certain media outlets that want to perpetuate fear. There are folks who truly are struggling day to day economically. And oftentimes they're fed a villain that they have to villainize and point the finger. And that's the reason why you're not so well off or why you're not successful. And unfortunately, they tend to point towards the Muslim community, the Arab community, the immigrant community. And Dearborn happens to be home to all three because Dearborn has a history of welcoming all. And as somebody who grew up in the post 9/11 era, I can tell you that we've experienced this time and time again. Post 9/11, I had a gun pulled on me saying, keep walking before we decide to shoot you Muslim kids. We saw Terry Jones come on down. We saw individuals come to the Arab American Festival, which has been canceled now, with pigs' heads on spears and signs that read, we have dipped our bullets in blood, so when we shoot you, you go to hell. So this is not new for Dearborn.
I found it interesting because former Mayor O'Reilly's son came on our newscast not long ago, basically echoing what his father said 15 years ago when Terry Jones, that pastor, for those who aren't familiar, came from Florida, not ironically, but coincidentally, the same group, a similar group came from Florida, the alt-right group, to basically say, go back to where you came from. The rich irony in that is that the people who are there are actually, many of them born and brought up in Dearborn. Going back to where they came from would return them right down the road.
Yeah, you know, Dearborn knows what Dearborn stands for. And oftentimes it is outsiders that come to Dearborn to stir up trouble. And the best response is actually not engaging. You know, but we're human. I myself, months ago, fell for the trap of engaging with an individual that has a history of being an antagonist and speaking negatively of Muslim communities.
And you said a happy day would be a day this person no longer lived in your community. Do you regret that?
And what we're really trying to shun is hatred. Yeah. What I regret is distracting from the issues and the work that we're doing, distracting from the message and the value system that Dearborn stands for. We're a thriving city. We cut 100 small business ribbons this year alone. We just announced Ford's New World headquarters right in the city, at the heart of Dearborn. We are the fastest growing city in the state of Michigan, one of the youngest. All the challenges that Michigan is facing, Dearborn has had a solution to. And so in many ways, we're also the example for the rest about how different communities come together and coexist and live peacefully side by side.
Well, let's just use that to segue into this next piece here. How do you take the political temperature as a total in America and bring that temperature down as someone who leads a diverse city that does have conflict?
You know, you always want to be mindful of the rhetoric that you use, but you really want to focus on the solutions and the policy work. Oftentimes, what I have found is that distractions on X or social media or certain media streams are just that. They're just distractions. They want you to engage, to distract from the work that you're actually doing to help improve the quality of life for so many residents in our city. We're improving our public health. We're improving our public parks. We're improving our public school system. It's best for us to not engage, because when you don't engage, they don't get the clicks and the views. They're not able to monetize that to make the money, and they tend to dissipate on their own.
I think that's really important to remember that. But big tech has a social responsibility to make sure that they're not pitting neighbors against neighbors, to make the other feel like they're the enemy. And the algorithm that is out there on your Facebook page, on your X, on your Instagram, on your any platform, basically says the more division that's driven by a post, the more likes and views it gets. And that's a problem.
It is a problem. Even just spending some time to read the post itself, if you spend too much time on a post, it'll start feeding your algorithm. And so the best thing I can tell you is if you have questions about Dearborn, come on down. Dearborn welcomes everyone. We are not a city that will burn your holy books. We're a city that will uplift them and find you an opportunity to practice your faith with utmost security and dignity. We're not a city that will disparage your unique name. We're a city that will dignify it. That is what Dearborn has stood for all the decades.
Yeah, and it's interesting because 15 years ago, I remember covering Terry Jones, that pastor from Florida who came into town. And at one point, his demonstration was going to block the entrance for services for a Christian church. And the mayor at the time said, hey, if you don't mind, Pastor Jones, with your hateful rhetoric, could you move it this way? We have churchgoers who want to come this way. If that isn't deep irony, I don't know what is.
I mean, even the protesters that came, some of these alt-right protesters, were walking by the historic nativity scene that the city of Dearborn puts up, talking about this fake Sharia law that's running rampant across Dearborn. Just this last week on Thursday, 2 days after these protests, we lit up our 35-foot Christmas tree in the heart of downtown West Dearborn. And so we're a city, again, that celebrates all and that welcomes all. And I wish people would ask and find out, as opposed to moving forward in ignorance.
Well, and moving forward, perhaps on social media, where 90% of the noise is made by 10% of the people because of that algorithm. But it's so good to see you. Mayor Abdullah Hammoud, always great to see you here on The Pulse.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for your time. We're diving into the race for governor right after the break. Former Republican House Speaker Tom Leonard with the state of his race and the big political headlines. You're watching The Pulse on Fox 2. It is people, power, and politics. Welcome back to Detroit's only nightly political talk show. This is The Pulse. Here to talk about his run for governor as one of the Republican candidates, former House Speaker Tom Leonard. And we are, as you know, on this program featuring these candidates many times as we head towards the elections to give you a chance to hear them out. And it's so good to see you, Tom. Great to see you.
Happy to be back. Always wonderful to be here.
Well, I know that you're tired. I mean, your campaign stops are exhausting. You were at like 3 or 4 different places today alone.
We were in Tuscola and Huron County. We had 4 stops. I think we met with about 5 dozen farmers. And yeah, I mean, these campaigns can get exhausting, but frankly, I'm energized every time we make a different stop. Meeting people. This is a big state to cover, but we have met a lot of great people in this campaign, and I'm excited about it. I'm looking forward to the next several months.
As a political journalist, I always joke that when polls are going well, then people tend to cite the polls. When polls aren't going well, they say, the most important poll is the one where people go and vote. But I think the bottom line is people do look at polls. And right now, the latest poll that came out, it shows that John James seems to be leading the Republican guard here. Does that stop you in your tracks at all? Does it make you kind of pause and wonder how you can move forward and what you're going to do moving forward?
No, absolutely not. I mean, it just requires a lot of hard work, and we have a long way to go. And listen, we're dealing with somebody who has ran statewide twice, been in 2 congressional races. He's had over $100 million spent on him. We just have to go do the work. We have to go out there with our message every day. And I was very clear to my team the day that we announced, if we have the right message, we can win this thing. And we are out there with a positive vision every single day. We had our first debate. And when I walked off the stage, the media asked me, they said, you were the one candidate that didn't speak ill or talk negative or attack anybody. Why is that? And I said, because the challenges that Michigan faces right now are greater than any one of us that are running for office. And the message is resonating. We just got to get out there every single day, put in the work, will win this thing.
Do positive campaigns work in this world that's flooded with messaging?
I believe in this environment, absolutely. I mean, last November, Roop, the Democrats gave Republicans a playbook for what happens when you wake up every day, you have no vision, you don't know where you want to take the country, and instead you're focused on hatred of one person. You lose. And I've been very clear, Republicans are not immune to that. We've got to go out every single day with a positive vision. We can't tweet at Jocelyn Benson or Gretchen Whitmer every day. We have to let people know what we stand for. That's what we're doing with this campaign.
Do you tweet at John James and ask him why he wasn't at the debate?
We don't tweet at anybody. Again, the challenges that Michigan faces right now are greater than any one of us.
But do you wonder why he wasn't at the debate? Do you think it was important?
You would have to talk to him. I mean, what I can tell you is every day we are out there taking our message to the voters of the state, and we have to. I mean, the fact that West Virginia is the only state that Michigan is beating for population growth right now. We are 49 out of 50 in unemployment. Just last week, we went to bottom 10 for income growth. Again, the challenges that we face are greater than any one of us. I'm out there every day attacking problems because, frankly, I want to keep my kids here.
What is the big message from your camp that you don't hear from the others?
Again, it's the positive vision and focus on real solutions to turn this state around. We're focused on affordability and affordable housing. We're focused on education and bringing real education solutions to the state. We're focused on mental health. I don't hear anybody out there talking about this mental health crisis right now facing our state. 25% of our population suffer from some type of mental health issue. Half of them are not getting treatment. 10% of the high schoolers in the state in the past 2 years have tried committing suicide. That is a crisis, and these are the issues that we need to focus on and we need to address.
But, you know, these are issues that they don't just pop up. The education crisis, the mental health crisis, these are issues that have been created by other politicians that have neglected to or taken away funding from things that are important. How do you move forward in your budget and pump money into mental health and change education? Education right now, we're bottom of the barrel.
Absolutely. I mean, first on education, you look at Mississippi, a state that's poorer than us and a state that spends far less on education. 10 years ago, they were 49 out of 50 for their third grade reading scores. The right policies, the right leadership, now they're top 10. It's about the right policies and the right leadership. In terms of budgeting, how do you find fraud, waste, and abuse? I'm the one candidate that said, let's go to zero-based budgeting. What does that mean? That means let's walk in, let's zero out the budget, and let's force me and my department heads to justify why every single line item needs to be put back in that budget. I mean, I look at it at the end of the year. You look at your cell phone and you look at all of these apps you have and these streaming services. What's the best way to save money? It is to walk in at the end of the year, wipe them all out, and really hone in on which ones you need to put back on.
Just from a 30,000-foot view, what subscriptions, so to speak, from Michigan do you get rid of?
From Michigan?
Yeah, what are the policies, the places, the things where we're wasting money?
Yeah, you look at the fact that over the last couple of years, we spent over $4 billion in economic development that haven't produced any jobs. I mean, you start there. Our plan, you look at it, it calls for eliminating and getting rid of MEDC and replacing it with the Michigan Business Action Center that will be there to help all businesses. This idea that the government should ever pick winners and losers, or frankly should tell businesses that have been here pouring their blood, sweat, and tears into this state that we're going to give other businesses incentives with your tax dollars and bring them here is wrong. It needs to end.
30 seconds left. What do you think about an AI data center and many of them popping up in Michigan? Is that a good thing or a bad
My
thing?
biggest question is, what is this going to do to energy costs across this state? I mean, we have some of the highest energy costs
Probably
in the
gonna go
Midwest
up.
and across the country. I do not want to put that on the backs of the taxpayers of this state. I want to know how it's going to impact energy costs before I agree to any data center in this state.
Tom Leonard, contending for the spot of governor in the state of Michigan. Great to see you on a long day. Thanks for making an appearance on The Pulse.
Thank you. I look forward to the next time.
Appreciate your time. That is The Pulse for tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Roop Raj, as always. It was great to be with you.